So, about Horizon Zero Dawn. So, Horizon Zero Dawn. Quite a title they have there. I thought it was a truly random one when I first seen the ads for this game back in the day, but after getting through it, I suppose it makes sense. But I'm not happy about it. Anyways, let's jump right in. This game has the goods when it comes to straight up gameplay. There's absolutely nothing to complain about the whole game long. Decima and Guerrilla Games is who I would probably vote to make my game for me if a company ever offered to do so for me. Wink, wink. I don't think I would change much about this game if I could, so that bodes very well for Horizon Forbidden West's coming on the horizon. Eh? Whatever. Anyways, let's dive in to discuss a few things. The combat in this game has a ton of different elements to it, and I mean that literally, as fire, ice, and electricity are big parts of what this game emphasizes. I never imagined large metal-clad machines to be taken down with arrows of all things, and in my mind, I picture them just tinging off the metal plating. Imagine the scene in the movie Year One, which if you haven't seen it, see it, please, where Jack Black tries to shoot the cow with an arrow and it just hits the side of it and does no damage as it falls to the ground. That's what should probably happen here, but the game is so well executed that it's much easier to suspend my disbelief. Like all games, this game has its bugs here and there, like with this Glint Hawk getting stuck in the level geometry here and then phasing through the top of it. I really tried not to get any footage of weird stuff like this time around, but it happens. Aloy is a really likable protagonist also. I love how she's so sweet and sometimes sour in conversations she has with NPCs, but it seems like she has the whole world pegged so right. She never seems to be wrong in the points that she makes about any given topic, no matter what they're talking about. Like, deep down, she's definitely a savage. She slays these robots with greater ease than anyone else and will murder a person without so much as a second thought. So it's strange how logical she is when discussing anything from finding a lost NPC in a side quest to clearing bandit camps, to getting rid of troublesome robot dinosaurs for some locals. It seems like the only thing she can't do is talk some merchant NPCs into giving her free stuff. My point is that Ashley Birch did a wonderful job as Aloy, and the writers of the dialogue succeeded in what they set out to do as well. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about the game world, as the game has some slick stealth mechanics, and hunting is what they frame Aloy's actions to be, even if she's really just senseless killing, and that's all she's doing. The player just wants to, play a video game and forget about the consequences of their actions if you did it in the real world. We play to escape, after all. You can hunt machines and hit critical points for quicker and easier kills, especially if they don't see you coming, or if you're in stealth, which as the footage shows here isn't always necessary, or you can kill regular wild animals for other assets like the meat or bones they carry, which is not cool, but hey, it's a video game, and who even cares, right? Also, as previously stated, we play to escape after all, so I try to keep that in mind when hunting these poor, innocent creatures. She does have some other options aside from going all guns blazing, and some of the robots are too big and don't have enough easily one-shotted weak points to simply stealth to death, so we then have the corruption arrows. I really like these things, as it's kind of like hacking the robot to be on your team, except for they can still hurt you and it's only on a temporary basis, but it's still probably the most useful tool to take out several giant monstrosities that happen to be part of a gang. Strength in numbers and all that. But these arrows only frenzy them for a short time, and then they're back to being all friendly towards each other. Hey, Frank, you good? You just tore Tommy's arm off. Yeah, sorry, Tommy. Not sure what came over me. Friends? Friends. And then you shoot Tommy. Hey, Tommy. I thought you said we was friends. Come on. Oh, shoot. Sorry, Frank. Not sure what happened there. Maybe a little bit of residual revenge leaked out or something. We're robots, Tommy. We ain't got no residual revenge. Oh, well, friends, etc., etc. So the point is I love forced allies, and you can get them on a more consistent and permanent basis if you go through these dungeon-like areas called Cauldrons. This is where the robot dinosaurs are built, and is kind of like where the source code for them is stored, because when you clear one of them, then you have the access to use Aloy's spear to hack them, and you get more access to hack more types of these robots, like bigger and badder variants, when you clear more cauldrons, as the game has a handful of them. I don't particularly like the cauldrons, and the footage I'm getting here isn't a very good example of one, as it looked more like the inside of an alien spacecraft where all the aliens happen to be out to lunch. Very, very samey looking environments in most of them. So That's why this one's my favorite, as it combines that with like a more outdoor natural aesthetic. Also, try to keep in mind that all the footage for this video was taken when the game was completed, as it is far easier for me to get footage I want for the most part and navigate the game world if everything's unlocked, and I'm more easily able to like fast travel from one location to the other. But back on topic. These cauldrons are probably the closest thing this game has to a dungeon in a traditional RPG. Other underground areas exist, but are less emphasized than the cauldrons overall and usually have less to offer unless you're there for like a narrative purpose. So that's just one of the things I wanted to touch on here for this. But back on topic. The hacking is pretty fun and easy when you decide to go that route. The things that you hack seem to be much more powerful than when they're your enemies. I noticed that if there's a herd of something and I hack just one of the things in that herd, then it actually stands a chance at defeating the rest of the herd by itself, which wouldn't make any sense unless it had a big boost in both power and aggression. As you can well imagine, turning enemies into friends is one of, if not the most broken and OP abilities in all of gaming, whenever a game gives you the opportunity to do that, anyways. Hey, Frank! You at it again! Come on! I ain't Frank no more. Etc, etc. And there are upgrades that you can get that make it so your enemy hacks last longer and longer until it's just indefinite. Other things that Aloy can do, which is even more broken, is that you're allowed to hack multiple enemies at the same time. So the herd is on your team now. And that's about as broken as it sounds. But that's exactly what I want out of my game. You can start me out as weak as you want, but by the time the game's all wrapped up, I want my character to be like a god in this world. Horizon and its developers thankfully understand that and feel the same way, obviously. But do you see how angry and aggressive my hacked robot is? That's exactly what I'm talking about. He's got no other objective whatsoever than chasing down his former friends and dismantling them. I wish everything was mountable and rideable, by the way, but I'll get into that later. Almost every robot enemy in the game is hackable when all the cauldrons are completed, unless they're the final boss type Deathbringer machine, or unless they're corrupted by Hades, which is the main point of conflict for the game's story and will probably carry over into this game's sequel as well. Oh, and the corruptors themselves aren't hackable, I don't think, as they are the machine types that actually house the hacking module that allows Aloy to use this to begin with. But the more powerful Ravager machine becomes hackable, and that blew my mind when it happened. And once you get to the game's final cauldron and beat it, you can fully hack Thunderjaws. I considered having my mind blown a second time, but by that point in the game there wasn't a big reason to hack them because you don't really get to sick them on anything, unfortunately. But that's okay, because I'd rather fight them anyways, as it's more fun. This game doesn't have any real formal boss battles, but just fighting the machines found in the overworld, especially the more high-end or aggressive machines, is so engaging. It's tense and just nuts sometimes. So formal bosses sprinkled throughout the game isn't necessary as a result. So good on them for pulling that off. Also wanted to take this time to talk about Aloy's end of game armor that you have to do a little bit of like fetch quest work for to unlock, but it's totally worth it as it's more or less the perfect armor. It has conditional invulnerability. It's the Shield Weaver or Ultra Weave MK 7.1, and it allows, if you play your cards right, you to never really have to die wearing this. And it even works on fall damage as well, which is simply amazing. I do wish it looked a little cooler, something more akin to what it looks like when it's in the casing when you first find it. That would have been nice, but the functionality is more important. So anyway, it gives you a rechargeable shield that overlays on top of your health bar to act as a second health bar, but since it recharges after avoiding damage for some time, then never dying is a total possibility. And that is what doing endgame armor correctly looks like, or functions like, rather, as it should probably look cooler than this. There are other cool weapons in the game though, like the Terra Blaster, which is a lifesaver against deadlier, more well-equipped machines, as it shoots some sort of sound wave or invisiblast of some sort that removes machine parts, both weapons and armor, making any machine significantly less deadly in every facet. The rope ties are also a lifesaver, as you can tie down just about anything in the game, except humans for some reason, and when they're down, you can either get critical hits with R1, hack them, or just go ham and do whatever you want. The bigger enemies in the game require more ropes to actually tie down, which makes sense, and they also saw fit to give us a little meter that shows us how many more ropes are needed to tie down this particular machine or whatever machine you're fighting. I also find it funny that Aloy can instacraft stuff. She runs out into the middle of a fight and just runs out of materials and then just makes more instantly, like a lot more too, like up to 50. It's crazy. It's kind of hilarious, but not the point. and she has what is essentially a slingshot that shoots little green goblin bombs that are also elemental. There's others, but that's all I'll touch on at this point. My favorite arrow type is the old tried and true fire variant. Pretty simple. Catch them on fire, they take damage over time, rinse and repeat. There's not really that much to that. Now then, the other things I'm going to touch on here are the mounts and the human enemies. You don't unlock mounts until a certain point in the game and skill tree, and you have to be able to hack the machines first. Then, if you get to a certain point in the skill tree, you can just fully call them out, like, for free. You don't even have to hack anything first. That's the kind of bone I wish every other game would throw me, honestly, but it is what it is. Anyways, when I saw this game had mounts, I knew after everything else the game had to offer that it was a complete experience. The human enemy variants, on the other hand, at least the regular ones that you find in the overworld, are pretty under-equipped and just garbage at fighting compared to all the machines. It seems like Aloy is the only person who realizes what kind of world she's living in and takes action appropriately. The Watcher machine type is really the only one you'll be one-shotting after a while, but as you can well imagine, the humans are much more frail, and sadly, not really any more intelligent than the machines, which, by the way, have minds like animals, and that should tell you everything that you need to know to crucially be able to handle the enemy type. Like everything else, they have strength in numbers if there's too many, but it's still never really a big deal at any point during the runtime of the game, so I'm not going to do a deep dive. There's really only 2 mountable machine types, which is a bummer, but hopefully in the next game they'll make it so literally every machine in the game has some kind of hack and mount programmed and ready to go. Now then, to switch gears, because they're robots, you get it? Whatever. The way this game handles the map system is by finding and climbing large, non-aggressive machines called long necks, like in The Land Before Time, to get to a higher vantage point a la Assassin's Creed. Then you hack them, and then boom, a bigger map. This is something I made into a priority while running through the game because the boons of having more of the game map unlocked should be obvious to anyone who's ever played an open world game before. That said, you cannot kill this machine type. And that's it. So yeah, moving on. I don't know about you, but the mocap and general game feel of the engine looks very, very good. This game's graphics are the real deal, and what other similar art style games should aspire to be. Like, I'm not really sure how, on the same hardware, other games can look like crap and how this game can look so good. The facial animations are gorgeous, and even the ugly people in the game, like Butt Fuglio the Blameless, or whatever his name is, can even somehow manage to be appealing to the eye, and just based on the beauty and graphical fidelity alone. Oh, there he is. I understand that the budget to the game has a lot to do with it, and obviously an indie studio isn't going to be able to produce a product like this, but any other game that can call itself AAA and has a, to put it in modest terms, large budget should never look worse than this at any point. I usually don't take so long to stop and gush about graphics, but this game can trick your eyes into thinking some things are real at times, and if the PS5 is going to do any better with this game's sequel, then I will be touching base on that sometime in the future as well, best believe. I mean, the Sun King looks good, Aloy looks really good, the machines look good too, to the point where programming them seems like it was a technical nightmare. I saw the behind the scenes for this game, and it seemed like Sony really believed in this project, which is risky for a new IP for any company, but they backed the right horse, fortunately, I think. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the human half of what I would be considered the final boss of the game. This guy, I guess, Helis or something. I feel his role was diminished, and for such a physically imposing dude who was supposed to be the human mastermind behind the game's events, I thought they should have really honestly done more with him. He obviously, during the actual fight with him, has more defense than any other human enemy in the game, but outside of that, it seems like he's just another dude that Aloy has to beat on her way to Hades. I think this should have been hyped up some more. It all has the potential to be so much more grandiose than it was, but was ultimately anticlimactic. At the very least, I should say that other than our protagonist, it seems like Helis was pretty much the only other person in the world who looked at the world around him and took the appropriate action. He at least is a more frequent user of the tools Aloy has access to at any merchant, like the slingshot bombs, and they tried to make the fight more interesting by cutting off your real estate in a boss arena as it goes along, but that added nothing and is still a misstep in my opinion. For the footage, I tried to use a larger variety of things to take him down, just to experiment and like spice things up. I even paid attention to the explosive barrels around the arena, which I would usually ignore since it seems to be more fun to just fight him straight up. But none of that was too interesting either, since he doesn't have, like, he doesn't behave appropriately to getting shot, shocked, burned, frozen, blown up, cut with the spear, etc. So I'm just backpedaling and getting hits in where I can because the game doesn't really allow for much else when you're facing him. So I guess that's Helis in a nutshell. Now, from a narrative and emotionally driven story perspective, this could have meaning rather than human beings flinging explosives at each other for 5 minutes. You gotta remember that Aloy's foster father, Rost, was unceremoniously murdered by this guy in a scene earlier in the game, so that makes the fight carry more weight from that point of view. But none of that because the fact that there was no large arena, there's no corrupted machines helping him fight. Hell, there was no hacked machines helping you fight. That would have been epic, but no. Just kind of an awkward fight, and then quickly get on with your business because the emotional satisfaction one is supposed to get for killing him is completely swept away by Aloy seeming like she doesn't really care, that she's getting her revenge, and has bigger fish to fry now. And speaking of said fish, let's talk about the final fight of the game. I want to get off my chest immediately before I start getting into all this, that this is probably the 3rd time in the game you fight a Deathbringer, straight up, and the way it fights is not special for the finale. The only thing different that there is that there's a time limit for the fight as a whole, and that's about it. You literally slay like 7 of these things during the tower defense portion earlier in the mission. I feel like they ran out of game disk memory or development time or something, because I would have really liked it if they designed one special, never before seen one-off kind of machine to have to beat for the final fight with Hades. This is actually the closest thing you get to an actual fight with Hades himself, and that's a huge bummer. When I first completed this, I'm like, oh boy, let's see what they came up with for the big man himself. It's gonna be good. And then come to find out, this is it. That was the final fight. It's a damn good thing for Hades that Aloy didn't bring one of those Oseram cannons, or the fight would be over in seconds. So, huge missed opportunity here. I'm not saying it was a particularly bad fight or anything. You actually have allies for the fight, kinda, and that's a rarity. A Deathbringer will occasionally summon a couple of one-off corrupted machines to fight in the middle of this one, although it becomes much more passive as a result, so it's more manageable to fight them both at the same time. It has an overheat meter, which means, once again, fire arrows to the rescue, and once it overheats, it exposes itself, so make sure no kids are watching. Hey? You get it? Damn, I'm like over 4 today. Anyways, then you literally want to focus fire on those weak spots and kill it before time runs out, and you're done. Now, I didn't only describe the final boss fight, because when you fight Deathbringers at any point in the game, then all of the same stuff I just said still applies, except the part where it summons friends. And hopefully now you can all see why I feel like this is such a bummer for this game's climax. I mean, they got the setting right, it certainly feels like a game climax. They just kinda, I don't know, missed the jump shot at the end of the 4th quarter is all. But since we have a sequel to this game coming, then we're going into overtime, I guess. So Guerrilla is gonna get another shot to get a win at this point. So I'm kinda also upset that the Terra Blaster doesn't take like any of the components off the final boss, and that blows. It never seems to expose itself when I have a better weapon, or when I pick up one of those heavy machine guns that you find lying around on the floor. So I end up just having to do like general damage to the main body, and then you can't overheat the thing with the damn machine gun. So you'll see in this footage I'll try to use the Terra Blaster and remove parts. I don't know why. I feel like I knew better, but I guess not. Someone let me know in the comments exactly what happens if time runs out in this, other than just losing and having to restart, because I've never let that happen. I didn't use a huge variety of her arsenal here, because not much of her arsenal outside of the hardpoint fire arrows are really even effective against the Deathbringers anyway. Most of what she has access to doesn't have any effect on it really, making it particularly meh to fight in general, and maybe a special arrow type would have been a good idea to speed up the Deathbringer fights specifically. We can call it the Deathbringer arrow. But that would be way too cool, and we can't have Merida from Disney's Brave pull out that bad boy and just start putting everybody away with it. Anyways, you can also see that the Deathbringer is occasionally shooting at me while I'm trying to handle the Ravager, but it would mostly prefer to just watch until I beat it and we resume the fight that we were having. I just think that the whole final encounter feels off somehow, and not what I was expecting. Earlier in the game, when you first discover that Hades is the issue, I immediately thought the final fight was going to be like deep underground in a cauldron. I don't know, like where the cores was being kept, like down deep in the cauldrons. But no, that doesn't adhere to my expectations either, and it's actually just lying over there in the grass. which I find to be remarkably convenient for our hero, the new and improved Elizabeth Sobek, combining the brains with the brawn like Professor Hulk in Endgame. Yeah, that's pretty much what she's doing. But either way, not a terrible climax despite all the bad things I've said about it so far. It's not like it's the worst thing in the world. So I've seen worse in games, and it could be better, but it could be worse. So it's just kind of meh. Alright, so then the game wants to pull off some incredibly obvious foreshadowing that Silence is going to be the big bad from the next game. So when the next game rolls around, expect to see him replace our good buddy Helis as the human bad guy in that, and then expect Hades to be a bigger problem, as he's going to be probably that giant mech walker that he's going towards over there. I just wanted to touch base on that though before moving on. So spoilers. At the end of the game though, she finally finds the old dead corpse of who she essentially is, or rather is a clone of, which is Elizabeth Sobek, as you can see there. And, you know, it's just kind of like an emotional moment for her, and I think they're trying to make it more of an emotional moment for us as the player, but it's not really landing as much for me, but that's just for me personally. Other people might be like, oh, that's so good. But yeah, I think that's gonna about wrap it up for this video then, and we'll discuss the next one next time. Man, they just keep churning out the bangers on this channel, don't they? Just video after video of just good games, good solid games. The past couple of years have given us some really good games, I think, in my opinion, anyway. And this is certainly one of them. Horizon Zero Dawn, like I said, from the beginning of the video all the way until now, has the goods. I enjoyed it thoroughly. From the beginning of the game up until the end. I'm gonna get the sequel. It's gonna happen, and it's gonna be probably also good. Maybe even better. But for now, this game on my scale gets a 4 out of 5. Great game for a game well done. Bravo. But with that, guys, I gotta say thank you for staying so sexy on the line. And as always, like, subscribe, leave me a comment. You guys have a good one.